And welcome, grade 12 maths with Mr. Simons, where we make maths simple. We get you exam ready. Today, looking at exam question on cubic functions taken from the supplementary exams of 2016. And here we're testing basically drawing cubic function. So let's look at the problem. So it was question 8.3. They gave us an equation f of x equal 2x cubed minus 23x squared plus 80x minus 84. So to plot the graph, number one, I need factors. So if you see there, first they ask that you must prove x minus 2 is a factor of f. And then so otherwise factorize fully. Right, also to ensure the graph is properly, we need turning points. So they determine the x coordinate of a turning point of f. And then sketch the graph of f clearly, labeling all turning points and intercepts of the axis. And then determine the coordinates of the y-intercept at the tangent of f that has a slope of 40 and touches f at a point where the x-coordinate is an integer. Right, so pause it here, look at the question. Attempt to answer as many questions as possible, right? That is the only way you see what you can and can't do. There where you've made errors, etc., work through the solutions with me. Identify your error, use a different color pen to note your error that you've made, and then correct your errors by practicing and practicing. Guarantee you, if you work hard on this concept, you will only get better in maths. Right, so. Right, now if you look at the first question here, prove that x minus 2 is a factor of f, right, for 2 marks. Right, so how do you prove a factor? Remember, if I simplify x minus 2, it will make it equal to 0, and if I take negative 2 over, it becomes positive 2. So in the equation, I'm going to substitute positive 2, and only if that answer is equal to 0 can I say x minus 2 is a factor. So you see, minus 2 became positive 2 when I substitute it in there. X cubed, 2 cubed, x squared, 2 squared, x, 2, and negative 84. So 1 mark for substituting of 2. 2 cubed gives me 8 times 2 is 16. 2 squared gives me 4. 4 times 23 is 92. 2 times 80, 160, minus 84. So 16 plus 160 gives me 176. Minus 92. Minus 84 also gives me 176. So 176 minus 176 becomes 0. So because when I substitute 2 into the equation, and it makes the equation 0, we can say x minus 2 is a factor. And so otherwise, factorize f of x fully. Now I'm going to go 2 ways and show you 2 ways how we do this. So given to us, we have 2x cubed minus 23x squared plus 80x minus 84. We know x minus 2 is a factor. So x times what would give me 2x cubed? X times 2x squared gives me 2x cubed. Right? Negative 2 times what would give me negative 84? Negative 2 times positive 42 gives me negative 84. Then there you see I have minus 23x squared. Right, so you see this value here and those two multiplied gives me the x squared. So minus 2 times 2x squared would give me minus 4x squared, right? So to go from minus 4x squared to minus 23x squared, how many x squareds are short? Negative 19x. Right, so 19x times x gives me negative 19x squared. Minus 4x squared gives me then minus 23x squared. Or we can use what they call the reverse L method. Right, so again, remember, I substitute 2 in to get 0. And then I write the values in front. So I have 2 minus 23, 80 minus 84. So I've taken the coefficients and I've written them down. So first we carry 2 down. So 2 simply becomes 2. 2 times 2 is 4. So write 4 on top. Minus 23 plus 4 would give me negative 19. 2 times negative 19 gives me negative 38. Right, so negative 38. So 80 minus 38 gives me 42. And then 2 times 42 will give me positive 84. 84 minus 84 becomes 0 or it cancels. Right? So this last term don't cancel, then you made an error and now you've written the values. Right? So you see they have 2x squared, minus 19x plus 42. Alright? And from there, if we factorize further, 2 is only a prime number. Right? So it can only have the factors 2 and 1. So 2x squared times x gives me 2x squared. For 42, I've used the factors negative 7 times 6 gives me, or negative 7 times negative 6 gives me positive 42. But minus 7x minus 6 times 2 gives me minus 12x. So minus 12x minus 7x gives me minus 19x. So they are factorized fully. So 1 mark for getting 2x squared minus 19x plus 42, and another mark for the 2 factors. So that is where your 2 marks come from. Let's look at the next slide. Determine the x-coordinate of the turning point of f. So once you hear turning point or you hear stationary point, we must find the first derivative first, make it equal to 0, factorize, get the x-coordinate. And then once we have that, if they said we had to get all the coordinates, then we go back into the original equation. So turning point or stationary point means first derivative. Ne? So f prime x, 3 times 2, 3 minus 1. 2 times negative 23, 2 minus 1. 1 times 80, 1 minus 1. And the first derivative of a constant will always become 0. So you don't need to write that line. I've written that line just to refresh and show you what we've done. So there 2 times 3 gives me 6. 3 minus 1, 2. Negative 23 times 2 gives me negative 46. 2 minus 1 gives me 1. 80 times 1 gives me 80. 1 minus 1 gives me 0. So x to the power 0 falls away. So very important, I give you 1 mark for the first derivative. And then 1 mark for making it, equating it equal to 0. So it must be shown. We don't work on assumption. If you don't write 0 there, you don't get that mark. That's your first error. If you then factorize wrong, that's your second error. So then you don't get the mark. But you've done that, then factors will be first error, and then we can still give you a mark there when we mark. Right, so from here, what can divide into 6, 46, and 80? 2 can go in, all of them. So 6 divided by 2 would give me 3. 46 divided by 2 would give me 23. And 80 divided by 2 gives me 40. 3x squared, so 3 is a prime number, so it only has the factors 3 and 1. So 3x times x would give me 3x squared. Factors of 40, yeah, I chose minus 8 times negative 5. Negative 8 times negative 5 gives me positive 40. But negative 5 times 3 gives me negative 15x minus 8x, then gives me minus 23x. So x equal then, if we simplify, negative 8 goes over, becomes positive 8. We always divide by whatever's in front of x, so that becomes 8 over 3. And there, if I take negative 5 across, x equal to 5. So 1 mark for factors and 1 mark for x values. Right? So now we have the x-coordinates of the turning point. We have the x-intercepts. So we are able to plot the function. So let's look at that question. Sketch the graph of f clearly labeling all turning points and intercepts of the x's for 3 marks. Right, so my y-intercept there automatically, my constant term at the end, 0 and negative 84. So if I put 0 there, in the place of x, y-intercept, x is 0. That will become 0, minus 0, plus 0. So I'm left with negative 84. Then remember, we fully factorized. That's what we got. So my first x-intercept, 2 and 0. Second one, 7 over 2 and 0. And the third one, 6 and 0. So there's 2 and 0. 7 over 2, which is 3,5. And then 6 and 0. Right? Negative 84. There's my y-cut or my y-intercept. Right? And then here on the top, my first turning point, what was 8 over 3, the x value. Second turning point was 5. And then if we plot, my graph goes up there, turns by 8 over 3, comes down, goes through 6. Right? So hope you understand, hope you follow. Right, let's look at the last question. It's a little bit more complex, but yeah, you follow. Right, now 8.3.5, determine the coordinates of the y-intercept at the tangent of f that has a slope of 40. So I assume you know slope of 40 as a gradient of 40. Right, and touches f at a point where the x coordinate is an integer. So when we say integer, no fractions allowed. Can have positive or negative, natural or whole numbers. Right, so that's the equation we're working with. 2x cubed minus 23x squared plus 80x minus 84. So to get the gradient of the tangent, which equal 40, we normally work with the first derivative. So first derivative, 3 times 2, 6x, 3 minus 1 squared. 2 times 23 minus 46, 2 minus 1, 1. 1 times 80 gives me 80. So that whole equation must equal 40. Right, and if we simplify now, take 40 over 80 minus the 40 gives me plus 40. So 6x squared becomes 3x and 2x, and that would become, let's see, minus 20 minus 3. So there, okay, I factorized without taking out, I forgot to type in. So all I've done is 6x squared divided by 2 is 3x squared. Minus 46 divided by 2 would give me minus 23, and 40 divided by 2 would give me 20. So 3x times x would then give me the 3x squared there. Minus 20 times negative 1 would give me the plus 20 there. And minus 20x minus 3x would give me minus 23x. Right? So therefore x equal 20 over 3, or x equal 1. 1 mark for making the first derivative equal to 40, 1 mark for factors, and 1 mark for choosing x equal to 1. 20 over 3 is not an integer but a rational number. Right, so if I substitute back in the original equation, I have 2 times 1 cubed minus 23 times 1 squared plus 80 times 1 minus 84. If we simplify, that becomes negative 25. So my point of contact, x is 1 and y is negative 25. So y equal mx plus c, so my gradient 40, gradient of tangent 40, so y equal 40x plus 1. Now we sub in my point of contact, which is 1 and negative 25. So x there is 1, y is negative 25. 40 times 1 gives me 40. If I take it over, minus 40 minus 25 gives me minus 65. So c is minus 65. Therefore, my y-intercept or coordinates would be 0 and negative 65. Right, so there, 1 mark for finding my point of contact, y value, 1 mark for substitution, 1 mark for answer. If you liked and enjoyed the lesson, please like and subscribe. Continue practicing. Most of these things we must know. We're going to do it again in the next slides. I'm going to do as many exam questions as possible and upload so that you have as much practice as possible so that you can become the best version of yourself. God bless. Bye.